All right, welcome back to our last college search video. We'll be talking about building a balanced list. In building the list, we already talked about SCORE and that being a good resource, but there are plenty of others out there. Check the college application guide for some links, but there's Big Future on the College Board site. And I want to highlight these two, Niche and the collegeexpress.com lists. I do like those because there are some great lists there that get at the personality of a school and the vibe of the school. So I like some of the things like, most conservative, most liberal, happiest college campuses, colleges where students like to play hard, work hard. I like the hidden gems list, and they also have some major specific lists that are really good, and we can get out of looking at these lists. I like them because I find that it encourages us to get out of that bubble of the same 20 or 25 schools that are super duper popular with Hillsborough students. So I like to see you get out of those. As you're looking at schools, make sure that you are, attending those school-specific info sessions, which is demonstrating interest, and we'll come back to that in a future video. Attending mock classes, student panels, be looking for both official and unofficial information from the school. So you're going to get that official view that's going to let you know, does it have the stats that I want? And does it have the offerings that I want? And what can I do there? And then we've got the authentic student info that's going to give you a lot about what kinds of students attend there. Are they happy? What would they change about the school? And this is a great time to be all over social media because I find that that's a great location to find that. YouTube has videos about literally everything. You got to take it with a grain of salt and balance it out. But when you start to hear a whole lot of complaints about one thing, maybe it's a real issue there. The school newspaper is a great place to look for that as well. As you're pulling together info, figure out what works for you in terms of organization. I don't care whether it's notes on a phone, a Google Doc, one of these Google Sheets. Set it up for yourself, what works for you. I don't care if you want to videotape yourself, whatever. I'm sure it'd be some TikTok challenge in the fall. But whatever works for you, go ahead and go with that. And make sure you're also following the schools on SCORE so that we know what you're looking at as your counselors, and also so that as I get opportunities, I can pass them on to you, because there's no way that I pass on all of the things I get over email to all 580 students. I would be flooding your email more than I already am. So I do send it off, though, to students who are following those schools in SCORE. So how many applications are we looking at? No magic number. Our average application number usually hovers somewhere in the 6-ish range. It's a little too early to know if that's going to go up or not this year because we're still kind of finishing out the rest of the process. It's okay to have a short list. Nothing wrong with only having one or two, as long as you know that you can afford to attend that institution, and that you've got some reasonable backup plans as well. Longer lists, we definitely have some students with some very long lists, as high as the mid-20s or sometimes low 30s. I really, really don't like to see students have lists that long, and I'll talk about that more in a little while. But there are some reasons to have longer lists, especially more selective schools, more highly specific programs as well. Students who need a significant amount of need-based aid and need to be applying to certain programs to get that aid, those lists should be longer too. So what are the buckets? We've got probables, formerly referred to as safeties, but I don't really feel like anything is super duper safe anymore, so I like to call them probables or likelies. We got matches, targets, and reaches and dreams. So probables, those are the ones that for all intents and purposes should be a pretty sure thing. Lots of accepts who look like you, you're above the average stats. Anything that you put on your list as a probable should be a place that you really like. It should be ticking all of your boxes in the fit category. Not just some or most of them, all of them. There are some great benefits, honors programs, special accelerated programs that, will give you a guaranteed spot in grad school, scholarships, money. What bigger benefit is there than making your undergraduate experience super affordable, especially if you are planning to go to graduate school? Then we've got our matches. That's places where not everybody that looks like you is getting in. It could go either way. This does not include super duper highly selective places for most students. I tend to put those into the last category, that reach dream category. So when there's only a small number of students who look like you are admitted, so the odds are not great, I call that a reach or dream. Those super duper highly selectives fall in that category. And otherwise, if you fall below the average stats, especially well below, the odds are long. And so I call that a reach or dream as well. And there are degrees of a reach. So let's see what these look like as a scattergram. Our Buddy Stu demo is back here. And as you can see, Stu is living in the land of green circles of accepts. This is absolutely a probable school for Stu. If Stu were over here, I would still tell you it was a probable school. But since Stu is way up here at the top of the class, he's a great example of a student who's probably going to get a sizable merit scholarship if this is a private institution along with an honors program invitation. If this is an out-of-state public, this is the kind of kid who might get money from those from an out-of-state public that awards scholarship money. That money typically goes to the top, 10, 15% of the students. This is the kid who might get some merit money from a University of Maryland if this and you look like this compared to the others. Match schools. Here's Stu, still hanging in the mid 50%. I call this a match. Kind of could go either way. Still somewhat decent odds, could go either way. I would also tell Stu, though, if Stu asked me, should he send his test scores, I would say, Stu, let me see your course rigor. And if Stu had, good course rigor for this school, good number of honors and AP courses all the way up through the senior year, and I read Stu's essay and it was really good and he had good extracurriculars, I would say, Stu, do not send those test scores. You absolutely want to be riding on the rest of your application because that's what's going to, help Stu in this situation to increase his odds. Now with reach, kind of the same story here. We saw the odds got worse. We're kind of, now hanging below the 25th percentile. But again, with the test optional, Stu's test scores are not really helping here. But all of those other elements of Stu's application, that is probably, that has the potential to increase the odds for Stu's acceptance. Now, if Stu, on the other hand, did not have great course rigor, test optional becomes less of an issue. Its test scores still aren't helping him, but the other elements of his application where we're now going to shift the elements aren't going to help him either. So that's going to make it more of a reach for him if those other elements are not so impressive. And then we've got the dream school. We can see we're falling well below the kinds of kids who are getting into this school. This is a much longer shot. I really try to encourage you not to have too many of these schools on your list. If you want to apply to one or two just to see, and because they've always been, your dream, then go ahead. But I don't want to see a full list of these. I'd rather see you in that last category where we've got some real possibilities that are more likely for you to potentially get into. So what's the key data we're looking at? We just saw kind of stats, and we had a little bit of conversation about test optional as well. You also want to be looking at the average statistics for the college, so all of the applicants, and as well as the percentage of students accepted. So is this a school that accepts 70% of the applicants, or 50, or 30, or like 8? And then we want to look at the stats that are available now, but we also want to cycle back to these schools over the summer once schools have released all of their information, for the graduating high school class of 2021. And let's see where schools land this summer. And I'm hopeful that they're going to release some great information about test optional applicants. So far it's shown to be pretty favorable. Submitting test scores is always going to help you when your scores are fantastic. But I'm hopeful some schools submit some, release some real good information about, what percentage of the students applied and were accepted test optional at schools like Rutgers and Penn State, and some of those other places out there. Make sure you're checking out those scattergrams that I just showed you, and narrow the list down to the last couple of years if you need to. If we haven't had that many applicants, definitely defer back up to that average stats of the school, and be super honest with yourself about where things truly are. At the end of the day, I want you to reach for the stars, but I also want you to have options when we get to the spring. So here's kind of a sample listing of what I like to see, kind of a good sample distribution. And here's 6 different lists. these could both be okay. It depends on the circumstances. This has become more common, especially for students with particularly strong GPAs and scores. They might be using a Rutgers as a probable and then feel like they've only got a certain number of schools that they're otherwise willing to apply to, because otherwise they'd rather just go to Rutgers and save the money. That could be a great option. Some students will use RVCC as a probable because they know that's a great backup option for themselves. They're going to apply to some reaches, a couple matches, see where things land. That's fine. These are great balanced lists. These are getting long. And when I say long, I don't mean long. I mean long overall, but I also mean the individual categories are long. You don't really necessarily need 4 or 5 probable schools, especially if you apply early action to them and you get in early. You can be done after you get into the first, 1 or 2 of them. You don't necessarily need to keep sending out a ton of applications to probables. I'd rather see you spend some time elsewhere. And then I would encourage these students to kind of, rein in the reaches somewhat for most cases. It's a good sampling of, our most popular schools and where the numbers really wind up. This is the 2020 numbers, so we'll see where 2021 winds up. We won't have that information until we get closer to the summer. Know that numbers are not everything, and numbers can be super deceiving. So just case in point, students can apply to 3 schools within Rutgers, New Brunswick: engineering, School of Arts and Sciences, and School of Environmental and Biological. That engineer may not get into engineering. They may only get into School of Environmental, and it counts as an admit. At Penn State, you can only apply to 1. They apply to engineering. They're not admitted to main campus engineering. They're offered a spot in Altoona. It counts as a deny. Doesn't necessarily mean that Rutgers is less selective, because we're still not talking about their program of interest. So, numbers are not everything. They can definitely, tell a different story when you know the context that's behind them. So what we want to do when we get our long list together and we're starting to whittle down, go back to that fit information. Does it pass the test? Can you see yourself there? Could this place be home? How many of those must-have boxes are ticked? What about the like-to-have? Are you meeting most of your needs? Does this represent the priorities that you were looking at? Don't be changing what you want to fit the place because you're so hung up on the name of the place. You want the place to be a good fit for what you want, because that's going to be what makes you truly happy at the end of the day. You got to go there for 4 years. It's not just about putting the bumper sticker on the back. You're enrolling there for 4 years. You want to be happy, and that's going to improve your odds of success at that school. You also want to take a good, 20,000-foot view of the list, and does the list as a whole make sense? It tends to be students are looking for a type of school. I'm confused when I see a list that has things like Ohio State on it and it has things like Juniata on it, because I'm like, what are you looking for? Big place of school spirit or small liberal arts college? What do you want? There might be some variation in location, especially now students want to keep some close by and further away options. That's okay, but the list should be pretty cohesive. And also, above all, can you afford to attend the schools that are on the list? You may have some on there that you're like, I know that the aid's got to work out for me to go there, but you need to have some good, affordable options for your family on that list. So make sure you're doing the net price calculators up front, and that you're not hoping for big money from every school on your list, because that could very likely leave you disappointed in the end. You want to make sure you've got some good financial options for you as well. All right, so that's the end of our search section. We're going to do our Q&A, and then after that, we'll be back for another set of videos, starting with how do colleges make decisions.